quiz of ice and fire. Hello and welcome to Radio Westeros. I'm Lady Gwyn.
And I'm yolkboy, and welcome to our first ever bonus episode. We're dropping this on Christmas Day as a gift to you listeners. It's our very first Radio Westeros quiz of ice and fire, and the theme today is winter.
Yeah, we wanted to give you guys a surprise, so we've prepared 17 questions of Song of Ice and Fire trivia, so you can pit your wits against us. The rules are simple. You can play alone at home or play along with other people too. There are 17 questions we've prepared, and we hope you all can have some fun with this, and maybe it'll be a good way to learn a few obscure facts that you might have forgotten. With the quiz being themed on winter, you can expect the questions to revolve around snow, ice, and cold.
Yeah, you can feel that cold, can't you? This being a bonus episode is a way for us to provide extra content. So, of course, we definitely won't be charging our patrons or doing shout-outs or anything like that. And no polishing or heavy editing either. Just a really simple way, and a fun way hopefully, to give you guys some extra entertainment. If you do have fun today, please let us know, and perhaps we can make it a semi-regular bonus feature. Maybe something we can provide between our regular serious episodes.
Okay, so we'll get started then. Grab your pens and pencils. We have 17 questions for you, and we'll ask them one by one, and then circle back and give you the answers at the end. If you follow us on Facebook or Twitter, you can always let us know how you did there, or comment on our website, or look for our post on Reddit and comment there.
Okay, so happy Christmas from Radio Westeros, and good luck.
Okay, question 1. George started writing A Song of Ice and Fire because a scene came into his head in which the presence of summer snow was very important. The scene was the Stark party finding a direwolf dead in the summer snow. Now, direwolves had long been thought extinct in Westeros, so our question is this: how long has it been since a direwolf was last seen south of the Wall?
Okay, can you remember that detail? How long has it been since a direwolf was last seen south of the Wall? I think a fair amount of you might get this, but it is one of those kind of details that you might forget. And anyway, on to question 2 now. The Night's Watch know a thing or two about cold and winter and snow. Our question is, which old member of the Night's Watch likes to boast that he can smell snow coming on?
Okay, so snow sniffing in the Night's Watch. Let's see how many of you remember that particular detail. And question 3 is about Varamir Sixskins, who is known for riding a female snow bear into battle. How tall is the snow bear, according to Varamir?
Yeah, that's the question. It's a female snow bear that Varamir likes to ride. I imagine he is pretty formidable when he's on that bear. But how tall does he say that the bear is? And a tiny clue, the detail comes out in A Dance with Dragons. I don't think that's going to be much help. Anyway, on to question number 4. In a Bran chapter of A Storm of Swords, we learn at the Night Fort that a group of so-called sentinels stood their watch there. These sentinels were Night's Watchmen who abandoned their post and headed south, becoming outlaws. They sought refuge with House Riswell, but were captured and turned over back to the Night's Watch. Holes were cut into the wall, and the men were placed in these holes to be frozen for an age in order to keep their watch forever. So our question is, how many frozen sentinels were there?
Grim reminder of what happens to deserters of the Night's Watch there. And on to question 5. In A Game of Thrones, John plunges something into, quote, basins of snow and shaved ice. What was it that he was plunging there? And I'll give you a hint. It was not a bottle of cider or a mug of mead.
Scotch? I would plunge scotch into ice, personally. But Scotch. I don't think that's what Jon Snow was doing. So what was Jon Snow plunging into basins of snow and shaved ice back in a Game of Thrones? I think this one is gettable, so at least some of you should get this. I think most of you will. Okay? And on to number 6. Jon's last memory of a certain character is standing in the yard with snow melting in his hair. Who is Jon saying goodbye to in this scene?
Okay, so we're thinking this might be the gimme question, but it may be a detail that escaped you somehow, so let's see how many of you remember that one. And on to question 7. How deep does the snow fall in Old Nan's tale of the Long Night and the Last Hero?
Ooh, it's another detail question. I know that some of you out there love the little details and memorize so many of them. So can you get this one? How deep does the snow fall in Old Nan's tale that she tells Bran? And I really like Old Nan telling these stories at bedtime. I often ask Lady Gwyn if she'll do the same for me, but she won't do it. Will you?
No, ha ha ha.
You won't, will you? I'll keep asking. One day you'll agree, I think.
Yeah, give me a few more years. When I'm as old as Old Nan, maybe I'll cut you some slack.
Great. Okay, and on to question number 8. This one is about a certain fool called Patchface. He says something happens to snow under the sea. So our question is, what happens to snow according to Patchface under the sea?
I'm sure it's something very strange, knowing Patchface. Okay, question 9. The Citadel sends what to announce the changing of the seasons?
Yeah, I think you'll put this one in the easy category. We have tried to vary the questions from easy to very difficult, and this certainly leans towards one that most people are going to get. Having said that, I often forget really glaring details, even though I kind of read the books every night. I often forget things, so we're not going to blame you if you can't get it. But again, the Citadel sends what to mark and announce the changing of seasons? And on to question number 10. In A Storm of Swords, Jon is taken to the tent of Mance Rayder. The wildling tents are made of sewn hides with the fur still on, yet Mance's tent stands out from the crowd. What hides is Mance's tent made from?
Mance's tent. I imagine it's something pretty distinctive.
I will give you a clue that Mance does have large antlers on his tent, just to jog your memory of the kind of visual. It's got these giant elk antlers on the tent, but we want to know what hides he uses.
Yes, we do. And on to question 11. Another one with Mance Rayder. Mance tells Jon in A Storm of Swords that he once visited Winterfell as a man of the Night's Watch. It had been snowing, and he saw that Robb and Jon had made a snow mountain above the gate and were waiting for someone to pass underneath. Who was the unlucky and unsuspecting member of the Stark household who had that snow mountain dumped on his head by 2 young rascals?
Yeah, I love this story. I think it's really funny. Like Lady Gwyn said, 2 young rascals playing with the snow. But who got all that snow dumped on them? Can you remember? Maybe, maybe not. And we'll find out later, but let's get on to question number 12. In the prologue of A Game of Thrones, the presence of the others brings an icy chill to the chapter. Luckily enough, Sir Waymar Royce is wearing a pair of gloves. The prologue ends with Waymar wrapping these gloved hands around Will's neck. So our question is, what were those gloves of Waymar's made of?
Yeah, that is mentioned at least twice, if not 3 times in the prologue, so hopefully that's a detail that stuck with you. George obviously wanted it to, for one reason or another. And on to question 13. According to Tormund in A Storm of Swords, on one particularly cold winter as a boy, he strayed too far from home. His horse died and he got caught in a storm. Where does Tormund claim to have sheltered to avoid freezing to death?
Yes, can you remember these Tormund stories? They are so funny. He is one of the most hilarious characters in the whole series, I think. And can you remember where he says that he sheltered to avoid freezing to death? Clue is pretty funny. I think you would have already guessed that. Anyway, on to question number 14. In A Dance with Dragons, Stannis and his entourage become trapped in snowstorms so severe that they lead to the deaths of men and cannibalism, and the Northmen do take a lot better to this cold than the Southerners. That much is apparent. And the Queen's man, Corlys Penny, wonders aloud whether an entire army had ever frozen to death in a winter storm. The clan chief of House Wool, Big Bucket, replies that this is no winter, this is only what?
Okay, so Big Bucket Wool, one of the most colorfully named of the Northmen, and also one of the most colorful speakers, and we talked about him in our North Remembers episode. Now on to question 15. There are 3 castles that mark the way up to the Eyrie in the Vale. We see them through Kat's point of view going up in A Game of Thrones, and then from Sansa's coming down in A Feast for Crows. What are these way castles called?
Yeah, can you get them? And I think we're going to be really strict here and say to get the point for this question, you've got to name all 3 of the way castles. Can you get it? Okay, question number 16. The Wall has 19 castles along its near 350-mile length. What is the maximum number the Watch has ever garrisoned as far as we know?
Okay, this should be a pretty tricky one.
It's really I think this is really tricky. It's one of the hardest ones. It's just such a small detail, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's mentioned just the one time, so unless you remember that specific small detail from A Clash of Kings, or you happen to memorize the Song of Ice and Fire wiki, this will be a tough one.
And there are people that do remember entire passages and so on. So if you're one of the people that does know, be sure to let us know on social media or YouTube or so on.
Okay, so now question 17. In A Dance with Dragons, Davos Seaworth makes the acquaintance of one Sir Bartimaeus, the Castellan of the Wolf's Den in White Harbor. Sir Bartimaeus tells Davos about that time slavers from the Stepstones captured the fortress. Then came a long, cruel winter, and a new Stark king descended upon White Harbor and reclaimed the Wolf's Den. Who was this king?
Yes, can you name this king? And that is the 17th and final question. So make sure you have all your answers in order for those of you that are writing these down, because we're going to go through the answers one by one after this. Okay, so let's go through the answers now to see how many you guys got right. Question number 1. If you remember, how long has it been since a direwolf has last been south of the wall? This came from the mouth of Theon Greyjoy, and the answer is 200 years.
Yep, that's right. In Game of Thrones, Theon said there's not been a direwolf sighted south of the wall in 200 years. And this is one of the many small mysteries in A Song of Ice and Fire. How did that mother direwolf get south of the wall in the first place? And of course, there are further question marks surrounding how did she happen to have the exact number of pups corresponding with the Stark kids, etc. It's a very intriguing minor mystery, or maybe not so minor. Okay, question number 2, if you remember, was about the Night's Watch snow sniffer. Which old member of the Night's Watch boasted that he can smell snow coming on? And it was Tywin.
Yes, Tywin. I think there was a clue because we said which old member of the Night's Watch. We were trying to give you a little tiny hint there. It is Tywin, and it was when the 2 corpse whites were there of Othor and Jaffa Flowers, and they didn't have any scent. Okay, here's a quote. Tywin, the gnarled old forester who liked to boast that he could smell snow coming on, sidled closer to the corpses and took a whiff. Well, they're no pansy flowers, but my lord has the truth of it. There's no corpse stink. So yeah, maybe he was onto something there. And on to question 3, which was, how tall was the snow bear that Varamir is known to ride into battle? That female snow bear, how tall is she? And the answer is 13 feet.
Okay, 13 feet. That's pretty tall. Varamir must have been pretty imposing, riding into battle on a snow bear, 13 foot tall, also in the company of 3 wolves and his shadow cat.
Lump's come a long way, hasn't he?
Yes, he most certainly has. Okay, question 4 had to do with those frozen sentinels in the wall at the Night Fort. How many frozen sentinels are there? And the answer is 79.
Yeah, the 79 sentinels is how they're known, and we've got the passage here. It's a really good passage, so I think it's worth me reading it. There are ghosts here, Bran said. Hodor had heard all the stories before, but Jojon might not have. Old ghosts from before the old king, even before Aegon and the dragon. 79 deserters who went south to be outlaws. One was Lord Riswell's youngest son, so when they reached the Barrowlands, they sought shelter at his castle. But Lord Riswell took them captive and returned them to the Night Fort. The Lord Commander had holes hewn in the top of the wall, and he put the deserters in them and sealed them up alive in the ice. They have spears and horns, and they all face north. The 79 sentinels, they're called. They left their posts in life, so in death their watch goes on forever. Years later, when Lord Riswell was old and dying, he had himself carried to the Night Fort so he could take the black and stand beside his son. He'd sent him back to the wall for honour's sake, but he loved him still. So he came to share his watch. And that is a fantastic story. A Song of Ice and Fire is just full of these mini stories, and I'm sure we're going to cover a lot of them if we carry on doing these quizzes, because they're ideal trivia. And now on to question number 5. In A Game of Thrones, Jon plunged what into the basins of snow and shaved ice? So what do you guys think? And this is quite an easy one. The answer is it was his hand. And if you remember, all the way through the books, John seems to be talking about his sword hand that he'd burnt. Well, this is where he did it, and it was burnt so badly that he was putting it in the snow to kind of cool it off. And at the end of Dance with Dragons, he struggles to clench his fist and grab his sword because of this injury, so it's very fateful. Okay, and on to answer number 6, Lady Gwyn.
Okay, if you remember, question 6 had to do with John saying goodbye to someone in the yard with snow melting in his hair. And who was John saying goodbye to in this scene? Well, of course it was Rob.
Yeah, in game, Rob was in the middle of the chaos as John heads north and his father and the royal party heads off south. This is the last time that John and Rob see each other, and John remembers it on several occasions going right through to Dance with Dragons. And interestingly, Sansa has a similar memory in A Storm of Swords, so make of that what you will. Anyway, we've got the quote of Rob and John saying goodbye, unbeknownst to the reader at that point, for the last time. He looked around at all the noise and confusion. Leaving is harder than I thought. For me too, Rob said. He had snow in his hair, melting from the heat of his body. And yeah, like we said, it becomes a kind of sad memory for John, and one that's enduring and stays with him. And now on to question number 7, which was about the depth of the snow in Old Nan's tale. Whether you believe Old Nan is exaggerating or not is another story, but the answer is 100 feet.
Oh, wow, that's a serious amount of snow. I mean, where I live, we get a fair amount of snow. The most I've ever gotten in one go is maybe 3.5 feet. Maybe had 6 or 7 feet on the ground at once, and that seemed like way too much to me. So 100 feet is going to be taller than most buildings, even taller than at least one of the walls at Winterfell. So
maybe as tall as Old Nan's tale itself. I'm a cynic of this 100 feet. I can't imagine Westeros covered in 100 feet of snow. I hope that's not how the book ends. Come on.
Yeah, we'll go with that. So now let's move on to question 8, or answer number 8. This is another snow. According to Patchface, what happens to snow under the sea? Well, if you live where I live in the winter, you might wish this was reality. Patchface says it snows up.
Yes, it snows up. Under the sea, according to Patchface, and that's from the Crescent prologue in Clash, although I think this is one that Patchface does repeat 1 or 2 times after that. Here's the original quote. "Under the sea, it snows up, said the fool, and the rain is dry as bone. I know, oh, oh, oh." Good old Patchface. I'm not sure if I love Patchface or I hate Patchface. Somewhere in the middle. He's such a amusing and annoying character at the same time. But, you know, I do kind of like his riddles and stuff. Okay, number 9. The Citadel sends what to mark and announce the changing of the seasons? So I'm guessing most of you got this one right. The answer is white ravens.
Yeah, that's right. We see a good description of a white raven in the Dance with Dragons prologue, Kevin Lannister's point of view. On the window seat, a raven loitered, pale, huge, its feathers ruffled. It was the largest raven that Kevin Lannister had ever seen, larger than any hunting hawk at Casterly Rock, larger than the largest owl. Blowing snow danced around it, and the moon painted it silver. Not silver, white. The bird is white. The white ravens of the Citadel did not carry messages as their dark cousins did. When they went forth from Old Town, it was for one purpose only, to herald a change of seasons. Winter, said Sir Kevin. Okay, so white ravens herald a change of seasons, not just autumn into winter, because we actually see one at Dragonstone in the Crescent Prologue, which announces the end of summer and the arrival of autumn. And another white raven arrives at Winterfell with the same message in A Clash of Kings. So there you go, white ravens and pretty impressive sounding birds. Now, question 10 had to do with Mance Rayder's tent. What were the hides Mance's tent was made from? And the answer to that is, you may have guessed this simply because of the theme of the quiz, snow bear hides.
Snow bear, so it kind of links with the question about Varamir earlier, doesn't it? And yeah, I did say it had these antlers. I've actually got the quote here. Mance Rayder's hides were the shaggy white pelts of snow bears. The peaked roof was crowned with a huge set of antlers from one of the giant elks that had once roamed freely throughout the Seven Kingdoms. So that is Mance's tent, and point is made that it stands out and it's, you know, much bigger than the other tents, and it obviously kind of looks different, and you can tell it's the king's tent is the point. Okay, number 11 is the amusing tale of Rob and John pushing a mini mountain of snow onto someone in the Stark household. They were having some hijinks, and our question was, who did they push this snow on? And the answer is Tomard, also known as Fat Tom.
Yeah, that's right. Poor Fat Tom, who went south with Lord Eddard and was killed by Lannisters in King's Landing. We have a quote here of John and Mance talking to each other, where Mance has just told John that he saw him when he was a young boy at Winterfell. "I remember," said John with a startled laugh. "A young black brother on the wall walk. Yes, you swore not to tell." "And I kept my vow. That one at least. We dumped the snow on Fat Tom. He was father's slowest guardsman. Tom had chased them around the yard afterward until all three were red as autumn apples."
Yeah, that's funny, isn't it? I can really just imagine this guy getting the runaround, his face like really red from the Stark kids having a laugh in the snow. That's a really cute story, very funny as well.
Yes, it was. Okay, now question 12. Had to do with Waymar Royce and those gloves on his hands that he wrapped around Will's neck at the end of the Game of Thrones prologue. What were the gloves made of? Moleskin.
Yeah, the chapter ends with this. They were gloved in the finest moleskin and sticky with blood, yet the touch was icy cold. Da da da. So they are the moleskin gloves. We picked it because it might have stuck in your memory. They're mentioned I think 3 times. I think it's 3. And the gloves are used early on to highlight Sir Waymar's privilege among his kind of worse off black brothers. Here's a description of Waymar early on in that prologue. He wore black leather boots, black woolen pants, black moleskin gloves. And it goes on to list, you know, how dapper the young man is looking. And it ends saying, no one could say he had not prepared for his vocation, at least insofar as his wardrobe were concerned. So, ouch, a bit of snark for the Waymar there. Okay, let's move on to question number 13, which is, according to Stormond in Storm, one winter as a boy, he got lost in the cold and the snow and there was a storm. Where did Tormund claim to have sheltered to avoid freezing to death? And the answer is inside a giant, in a story that resembles Empire Strikes Back, doesn't it?
Yeah, it kind of does. Made me think of that. It made me think of another maybe more obscure movie reference. There's a similar scene in Rob Roy where they shelter inside of a dead cow. Here we have Tormund telling Jon the story when Jon asks him if it's true that he killed the giant. Tormund's reply, "Now why would you doubt a mighty man like me? It was winter and I was half a boy, and stupid the way boys are. I went too far and my horse died, and then a storm caught me. A true storm, not no little dusting such as this. Har! I knew I'd freeze to death before it broke, and so I found me a sleeping giant, cut open her belly, and crawled up right inside her. Kept me warm enough, she did, but the stink near did for me. The worst thing was, she woke up when spring came and took me for her babe, suckled me for 3 whole moons before I could get away. Ha! There's times I miss the taste of giant's milk, though."
Tormund and his stories. I like the way it's kind of like a really interesting story, and then it just gets more and more absurd as it goes along. Just classic Tormund. I can't wait to cover Tormund one day. Maybe we could do a Wildling episode. That's one for the future.
Okay, question 14. That, if you remember, had to do with Big Bucket Wool talking to Corlys Penny in that icy crofter's village. And Big Bucket Wool scorns Corlys Penny's calling the storm that they're stuck in a winter storm. He tells him, "This is no winter. This is only autumn's kiss."
Yeah, that's a really memorable line. It underlines how the Northmen can just withstand this cold that's just killing, literally killing the Southerners. And it just doesn't seem to bother these clansmen. They're so hardcore in the winter. And I've just got the quote here. "Up in the hills, we say that autumn kisses you, but winter fucks you hard. This is only autumn's kiss." And on to number 15. It's the 3 castles that mark the way up to the Eyrie in the Vale. And we wanted you to name all 3 of these way castles. And they are called Stone, Snow and Sky.
Okay, yeah, Stone, Snow, and Sky, although the term castle might be giving them a bit too much credit, because as you go up, they become less and less like actual buildings, and in fact, Sky is just like a little wall on the side of the hill. But we have a description of them here, of the approach to the Eyrie, which is rather impressive, so we're going to read that. "The Eyrie was the only castle in the 7 kingdoms where the main entrance was underneath the dungeons. Steep stone steps crept up the mountainside, past the way castles, Stone and Snow, but they came to an end at Sky. The final 600 feet of the ascent were vertical, forcing would-be visitors to dismount their mules and make a choice. They could ride the swaying wooden basket that was used to lift supplies, or clamber up a rocky chimney using handholds carved into the rock." So, Yolkboy, which method of approach to the Eyrie would you choose? The chimney or the basket?
To be honest, Lady Gwyn, I don't like heights.
I don't like heights either, but I kind of like to see the moon door, so I might brave the basket if I could sit down inside it and close my eyes. Anyways, question 16 had to do with the number of castles the Watch has garrisoned on the wall, and the answer is 17.
Yes, 17 castles that have been garrisoned at the wall. And that comes from A Clash of Kings. And speaking of 17, let's find out the answer to our 17th and final question. And it's the one that was about which Stark King rather, descended upon White Harbour and reclaimed the Wolf's Den. So who was this king? Can you remember? It's got a very distinctive name. The answer is Brandon Ice Eyes.
Yeah, that's right. It might have been an easy guess to go with Brandon, but Ice Eyes is a very distinctive name. And we actually have the story that Sir Bartimaeus tells Davos here. It's one of those good side stories, and this one is pretty grim.
Yeah, read it for us. It's so creepy.
Yes, Bartimaeus says, "Then a long cruel winter fell. The white knife froze hard, and even the firth was icing up. The winds came howling from the north, and drove them slavers inside to huddle round their fires, and whilst they warmed themselves, the new king came down on them. Brandon Stark this was, Edric Snowbeard's great-grandson, him that men called Ice Eyes. He took the wolf's den back, stripped the slavers naked, and gave them to the slaves he'd found chained up in the dungeons. It's said they hung their entrails in the branches of the heart tree as an offering to the gods. The old gods, not these new ones from the south. Your seven don't know winter, and winter don't know them."
Yeah, I get creeped out with some of these northern legends and things that went on. I think a lot of kind of dark stuff went on up there. What do you think?
Yeah, this hanging entrails and the heart tree and all that sort of business. And that quote about winter, your seven don't know winter, and winter don't know them, is also pretty chilling. And a fitting way, perhaps, to end our winter quiz.
Yeah, so thanks to all of you that have participated. We really hope that you've enjoyed it. We can do more of this kind of thing because it doesn't take us too long to get this together, so it doesn't kind of interfere with our output of our, serious episode, which are always going to be our focus. But if you like this and you like the idea of bonus content, then please contact us and, tell us that, let us know, and we'd be glad to do some more. Okay, so that wraps up the Quiz of Ice and Fire Winter Edition. Add up all your correct scores and see how you did there. Feel free to shoot us your scores and comments over our various social medias. And like I said, let us know if you want more of this. Okay, Lady Gwyn, any final words?
Well, I certainly hope you enjoyed listening, and maybe you learned a few obscure facts, or maybe just had fun remembering some facts that you already knew, or laughing at us for thinking we were challenging you, hardcore Song of Ice and Fire fans. Either way, we hope it was a fun way to spend a few moments, and we wish you all a very happy Christmas and a wonderful New Year. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.